All right, so Andrew Schulz was just on Joe Rogan's podcast, and they spent some time discussing comedy, the art form of comedy that us mere mortals will never understand. But at least we're lucky enough to have these two here to describe to us what it's actually like to be proficient in the art of stool humping and leg slapping.
Let him go. Oh my God.
And I know a lot of us as civilians, we think comedians, they just go on stage and talk. But we don't fully understand that these people, they transcend talking.
When a person's up there, like I was watching you last night, it's like he's just talking.
Yeah.
Like, why is it so funny?
Yeah.
Like, that's how people look at it. Like, why is this guy so funny? Like, he's just talking. I talk too.
Yeah.
I could do that.
Yes.
I know how to talk.
Yeah.
But they don't understand.
They don't understand it.
Like, you're just doing this magic show for them, and they think it's just talking.
Isn't that wild that, like, it doesn't start as just talking, and ideally we can break it down to the point where that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Like it starts in our head. There's like a premise, and there's a line, or there's a statement, or there's like I'm thinking of that joke that we won't say that you have, and it's just like that's just a statement. That's a feeling, you know. I was talking to my boy Mark, and I was just like, let's just like riff, but don't tell me a single joke. Tell me what you feel. Tell me what is causing anxiety.
I mean, who wants to hear about this? You know, because most people, they don't have a comedian's brain. We're just pedestrians, so we can't really relate to this at all.
A comic's brain is so different than a pedestrian's brain.
And pretty much the whole podcast was like this. They're talking about comedy the whole time, which, you know, I understand Joe, he just opened a comedy club, so he's all excited and he wants to talk about comedy. But this just had to be one of the most pretentious conversations ever, possibly. And it only gets worse from here. And this is exactly why people are getting sick of these comedians, because it feels like we're watching two self-obsessed Hollywood actors. Like, this is the kind of behavior you'd expect from people in Hollywood. You know, people that comedians usually rail against for saying stupid stuff like this. You know, if this was some actor or some musician talking like this, I feel like Joe and Andrew would probably make fun of him, which they should, because, I mean, this just sounds so cringy. Like, these comedians' egos are getting way too big, at least Andrew Schulz, for sure. I mean, the way he's talking about his special here, you'd think he just cured cancer. He's like, oh, the process was so difficult, and I could have just reused old jokes, but I didn't want to just settle for something basic. I want to do something new.
That's like a lesson I learned with this, you know, trying to write new stuff since I put out the last special. I was telling you this. It's like really hard. It's like really hard for me, and I hadn't experienced that before in stand-up, but I was just I just didn't want to like do a different version of jokes I'd already done.
Right.
And I feel like sometimes that happens. Like it's not necessarily bad, like, but I've done it for sure. But I just really wanted the comedy to reflect what I'd gone through in life and how I'd changed in life, and that was hard, man. To like sit there, think. Develop new ways to attack these things that I haven't experienced before, you know?
Yeah, your stand-up is basically like a snapshot of who you are
in that moment.
At that year.
But
like if I look at a special that I did from like 2009, I'm a very different person.
Mm-hmm.
If I look at a special I did from 2016, I'm a very different person.
Yeah.
Like, and so like it's just a snapshot, and then you have to kind of figure out who you are now.
Yes.
And all your new material has to be, who are you now?
Yes. And
you know?
if you're honest, you acknowledge who you are now.
Yeah.
And I think some people or some comics, they don't, and then they get into that world where they kind of almost look like they're doing an impression of themselves.
Yes.
And the audience can tell.
100%.
Doesn't he do that kind of thing? On his podcast, he's always trying to do some kind of character or something. Like, if you just watch him on here and then watch him on his podcast, he's acting completely different. Like, on his podcast, sometimes he talks like he's from the streets or something. It's so weird. But it's crazy how much these comedians love to talk about how important comedy is and how seriously they take it. But then the stuff that they laugh at and joke about sometimes is like middle school level humor. Like, right here, Andrew makes a joke that I think every person has heard before, and Joe laughs at it like it's the funniest thing he's ever heard. And of course, this starts off with Andrew talking about how important comedy is and how it's like the professional sport in Austin.
But I think with Austin specifically, one of the things I didn't realize is that like comedy is the professional sport here. You don't have a basketball team. You don't have a football team. You have a college football team.
Dope soccer team.
You got a soccer team, right?
Yeah.
But for people who are not gay, There's
Oh,
you
no.
wanna run around kicking balls all day. That's fine.
I love that he says that, and it cuts to him, and he's sitting there with capris on, with his legs crossed. And just think about him on his podcast. He's always grabbing his co-hosts. They're always touching each other. They're like rolling around on the ground together. I mean, if soccer's gay, then what is comedy? And I'm not even a fan of soccer. I don't like it that much, so I'm not offended by them making fun of it. But I am offended at Joe laughing so hard at such a stupid joke, especially after going on and on about how complex comedy is and how it's this really deep art form and people just don't understand it.
That's the beauty of like a great joke or like a great premise, is the one where it's like you almost stumble into it.
Yeah.
You're like emotionally engaged in it so much you're not even trying.
You almost have to
laugh.
think of it like musical notes. Like there's all kinds of musical notes. They're all good.
Yeah.
But they just serve different purposes. And to make a great song, you got to put them all together where it flows. And that's like part of what we're doing too.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to have those jokes. It's like that's how you feel. That's a part of it too. It's like there's a lot of stuff going on when you're doing comedy.
I almost think I memorize. Like people go, how do you memorize all the words? And it's like, I don't think I memorize the words. I think I memorize the song.
Yeah, how it sounds.
Yeah, and like how it
doing
feels and the rhythm of it. And I think that's why like sometimes when you like adjust to different room sizes, like your rhythm can get off and you go, oh, I forgot that section. Yeah, because the song is different. Yeah. The song is slower, the song is faster. But I memorized the song in this, was it pace or syncopation or whatever it is, this rhythm. Now it's a different rhythm. I need to memorize it in this different rhythm.
Yeah.
It's crazy how into this they are. And Joe's pretty much been having the same conversation for like 15 years. You know, whenever he has a comedian on, he's talking about comedy, at least a little bit. But this is definitely the worst it's ever been. You know, this is hard to listen to. And it's also embarrassing when you realize how much these comedians need Joe's affirmation. Like right here, Andrew starts making a joke about religion. And this is after he's talked about comedy for like an hour. So it just feels weird, like once they start making a joke after they described every little detail about comedy. But he starts going into it and he says something and makes Joe laugh. And then Joe adds a line onto the joke and Andrew loves it. He's so excited by this.
They needed it in the time. You know, like I almost wonder if you look at religions as like girlfriends. Like every new one is a reaction to the last one. Like Judaism was like very strict and there's all these rules and you can't eat this and you can't do that. And then like Christianity comes around and it's just like, hey bro, I love you. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you did something. I love you. You know what I mean? Like, it's right. Like, there's some.
Just say you're sorry.
That's it.
Just say you're sorry.
Say sorry. And
Okay,
I love you.
we
Come to
forget
heaven.
And another thing that's really annoying about Schulz is sometimes when he's talking, he acts like he's saying the most profound shit ever. And it's just some like basic idea. Like right here, he's talking about AI and he blows his own mind. Like the way he reacts to this, it's like nobody's ever thought of this before.
Bro, imagine ChatGPT came out during COVID and was like, I think most people will be all right.
Yeah.
Like imagine AI steps in and interferes with narrative and agenda.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's dangerous.
It's very dangerous because it's already doing it.
And then there's another good example of this where Andrew's acting like he's a philosopher or something. I think he's been watching too much Jordan Peterson, like just with the hand gestures too.
I almost think about like what is popular now in society and culture, like these figures, like Jordan is a perfect example, like you're a perfect example. Like I think we as Americans have kind of like left religion, we still need the structure.
Yeah.
And like even like telling somebody to get in an ice bath in the morning. Like that's a religious act. Maybe it's not done for God, but there's a consistency there. There's something that you do that makes you feel good. Like I feel like we've found a way to like a la carte the different structures that religion provided us now that we don't have religion.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that about the ice bath because I think that sometimes it is a ritual for me.
All right, so that's about all I could take of this. Thanks for watching. Make sure you leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about all this. And if you want any extra content, make sure you check out my Patreon. And then hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video.